Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shred the Veil. I'm Daniel here with my brother Derek, and we're really excited to have our guest today, Brooks Agnew. Brooks, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a beautiful day. Good day for us to finally get together.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. A little bit about Brooks. He has quite a education background, going to several universities, was in the Air Force, studied in electronics engineering, nuclear chemistry, entrepreneurial studies, quality and statistics, a PhD in physics, and 30 years in the manufacturing industry as a consultant also to top tier companies. Was an adjunct professor of mathematics. He holds patents, trade secrets, proprietary knowledge in chemistry, chemical engineering, subspace communications, electric vehicle technology, and architecture. He has 12 books with 7 bestsellers. He's a host of X Squared Radio, and he's been that for 18 years. So pretty an accomplished individual to say the least. And we're just really glad to have you here. And we want to kind of go more into your background, I guess, to start off with. We were just talking with you about a story about your encounter with a UFO. So that's quite intriguing. But I wanted to go into a little bit about some of your earlier experiences. If you don't mind telling us a little bit about the missing time you had as a child, perhaps, and
Oh.
how that was, and where that kind of led you in your path of kind of change of trajectory for the rest of your life there.
Yeah, well, I was just an ordinary kid, I imagine. But when I was 9 years old, that summer we went camping up in the Sierra Nevadas up around June Lake. So it's way above the tree line. And they have campgrounds where you can, pitch your tent and park your car and get some water. And they have a community bathroom and stuff like that. So we're camped out. I imagine we got up there on a Friday because it must have been Saturday morning. And I got up before my mom or my grandparents. And so they didn't want to get up yet. No, food wasn't ready. So I said, well, I'm going to walk up, 100 yards or so past the bathhouse and our bathrooms and go fishing, just cast and see if I can catch anything. So I took my tackle box and my pole and I walked up there and cast it a little bit. You know how kids are. Can't catch any fish, pretty soon it just becomes casting practice. And then you're done with that. So you're pitching rocks and looking around and stuff. So that was it. I pretty much got bored and picked up my rod and my tackle box and walked back. And as I got around the bathrooms and had a clear eyesight to our campground, our campsite, we were the only ones in the campground. I noticed the Rangers mint green pickup truck parked there at the site, and he was outside of the truck, and the Ranger was talking to my mom. And my mom, of course, fully dressed and had her arms folded, and that usually meant someone was in trouble, probably me. So anyway, as I got close to them, she turned and saw me and immediately started like, where have you been? I said, what do you mean, where have I been? I told you I was going to go up here and, cast, see if I can catch some fish. And she said, well, you've been gone all day. I haven't been gone all day. I've been gone like, I don't know, an hour maybe. And the ranger said, no, we've driven all over looking for you. We were up and down. We saw your tackle box and your rod, and we thought maybe you'd fallen in the creek. So there are people looking for you. I said,
Wow.
what are you talking about? He said, son, it's almost 5 o'clock. I mean, the whole day had gone by, and that just wasn't possible. But anyway, somehow I got out of that trouble and lived through it. And but the odd thing is when we got back and school started again, I wasn't the same kid. Everything just was there. I mean, I was literally thrown out of school because I was answering the math problems as fast as the teacher could write them on the board. And the teacher didn't like that. She wanted me to, raise my hand. You know how all that order is. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. So my parents pulled me out of school and sent me to military school for 3 years to try to settle me down. And it just wouldn't happen. Just, I was a man. I was an adult in a body of a 9-year-old. And I knew all that stuff already. I'd read all the books. I'd read all the SRA readers. I was doing calculus. My brother was studying for his PhD at Long Beach State, and he would get frustrated with me. And one day he put down a big piece of paper, and he wrote up at the top, CNOH. He said, these are atoms, and here are the bonding rules for these atoms. Here's a pencil, draw me a molecule. So he came back about an hour later, and this was a big piece of paper, like 11 by 17. It was completely filled with atoms. And he walked up, looked over my shoulder, and he said, what the hell? What is this? I don't know, but this all obeys all those bonding rules. It was enormous. It was almost 3D. And so he started taking me to college at Long Beach State, and they had a special program where they studied kids like me. And I can remember standing in front of psychology classes, explaining to them how I built this B-17 model. I was in booths, where they flashed cards in front of me and then wanted me to guess colors. And I don't remember all the details now, but they studied me for a couple of years at that college.
Jeez.
And, California was one of those weird states that got grants to study kids like that in the early days, in the 50s, 60s. And I was one of those kids. So by the time I got out of military school, I was ready to go into the 6th grade. I managed to behave myself. But in the 7th and 8th grades, we moved to another school. And that's when things began to take off. I did not miss a math question for 2 years. And the newspaper came to interview me. And I don't remember all the interview, but I remember one question. She said, So Brooks, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm in the 8th grade now. It's 1968. I said, I want to be an asteroid miner.
Okay.
She did not know it. I don't know how the interview went from there, but I remember being close to the space program from that day forward. I've just been more than an enthusiast, because the tier companies that I work with are the Fortune 100. And I got hired, as soon as I could. In fact, I got hired before I graduated college because they saw my test scores. I was on salary as a senior, just going to class. Wow. And when I got out, I started solving problems for the big guys. And a lot of this stuff was going to space.
Cool. Wow. Do you have any theories on what happened to you when you lost that time?
Well, I didn't even really think about it being a lost time, incident like you're thinking, until I went to James Gilliland's up in Trout Lake, Washington. And that's when the next level happened. It was August 17th, 2006, on a Sunday. No, it was actually a Saturday afternoon. And I went into meditation because we had learned how to meditate again. And I went into meditation and somehow connected with Mount Adams. I know that sounds really strange, but it felt to me like, you know what a dryer tube is, like 3 inches in diameter, kind of corrugated, woven wire kind of tube.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And down this tube, the tube went out the window and across the way and up to Mount Adams. It was meditation, so it was kind of metaphysical, but
wow.
Voices were coming down this tube, and it was voices like singing, like an angelic choir. And I thought, wow, James is really playing some cool music out there, because it sounded like, I don't know, Tchaikovsky or something, some medieval kind of choir. But I was fascinated by all the voices, bass and tenor and falsetto, and they were all in there. And then I started to realize that they were actually singing words. It wasn't some Latin or Russian. And the words were really stretched out really long, like a whole breath. Peace, love, and joy. I thought, wow, that's really beautiful. And it went about 3 cycles of that, and it went quiet. And then this voice came down the tube, and it said, excuse me. It said, because you are quick to forgive, you are forgiven. And this tube just disconnected from me. And it was like decompression. I came out of the meditation like that. And the other people in the group were just wide-eyed like this when I opened my eyes. And I said, did you see that? And they said, did you see that? I said, what? told him about the tube and the voices and everything. He said,
Yeah.
no. You had these gold plates going into your back, like schematics and drawings and pictures and diagrams, and more than one person saw it. So it was like, I
Wow.
don't know what that is about. But anyway, the next day was Sunday, and I decided to go speak to a woman there whose name was Angelica Whitecliffe, and she's a good friend of Michael Sala, who you know him,
Yep.
exopolitics guy. And I really wanted some answers, and I tried to explain to her what had happened, and she said, "Oh, Brooks, that's just a download." I didn't know what a download was, but over the years, all that stuff has started coming out. That's where all the books came from. That's where all the inventions came from, and it just keeps flowing to this very day.
Wow. That's incredible. Oh my gosh.
I got to ask a simple question. Did you ever get your IQ figured out what it is?
Did I figure out what? Well,
What's yeah.
that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I had a lost time incident because people started talking at these conferences about lost time incidents. I didn't even really know what one was. And then I realized, wow, I think that's what happened to me. I think that's where the 8 hours went. But I don't remember anything. I wasn't taken up in a ship. I didn't walk through a portal of some kind. It was like I connected with my ancient self.
Yeah.
Like I've been alive for a long time, like millions of years. And what I have known in other lives is now known to me now.
Yeah, you're tapping
That's
into something from the past that all that knowledge that you had. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that leads to my question. Yeah, because I remember you speaking at Mount Shasta last summer, and you sort of hinted at your past lives and who you were, and I know you said you kind of, do you remember what other races you might have been or where you lived or all that kind of thing?
I remember one. I remember one. And I wrote about it in my book, Remembering the Future, the Physics of the Soul and Time Travel. When we were taught to meditate, one of the things that we do as part of the mechanics is when you go in, you have sort of an arrival place. You don't just go in and go drifting out into the cosmos. You have a point of entry. And for me, it started out as this wrought iron white chair in the middle of a meadow in the mountains, but it didn't work for me. It was just not where I was supposed to be. So I stretched out a little further and I kept waking up on this patio like a terrace, and the terrace overlooked the ocean. And the ocean, was of course, you could see to the horizon, except it wasn't our sun. It was another sun, and it was huge, like red. It took hours and hours and hours for this thing to rise because it was obviously going red giant. And I could see through the corona, I could see two other stars, a red one and a blue one. They were much smaller, not like suns, but big, like almost maybe the quarter the size of our moon. And so it was obviously not here. And then I don't know, it was a couple of years into it, going to the same place and then going out from there to wherever I was going to explore in time. I said, I want to know what I look like. So I looked down at my hand and I noticed I had 6 fingers. And I noticed that instead of 3 joints, I had 4 joints in my fingers. So I drew that hand just as I remembered. I put it down on paper and drew it, pictured it. And then I was out hiking in the mountains on that world, and I came across a body of water that was standing. So I looked in it to see what my face looked like. And I had like golden skin, blonde hair, and my entire eye was blue. 2 rows of teeth. And the odd thing is, I had 2 sets of vocal cords. So it wasn't like I could speak with one voice. You spoke with 2 voices. And if you were talented, you could make them harmonize with each other. So it was great for singing. And the indigenous people that lived there, I was about 7 feet tall from what I remember, but the indigenous people that lived there were about 3 feet tall. So I was not even from that world. And over the years, I've discovered that I came there with another visiting party, a mining company. And they used us as emissaries. This is way before Avatar came out. So you can imagine when that movie came out, how bad it blew my mind. It really blew my mind.
Yeah.
Even though I was a different color, the idea that the planet is alive and that you're connected with the energy of that planet, and that, you know, there is this outside mining company that comes in to try to strip the wealth off the planet, and the planet has an allergic reaction, and so they end up leaving. And I stayed behind with my wife, and then I died on that world. That world was destroyed by that exploding star, and 1800 years later I wake up in the body of a 9-year-old boy. This is just as clear to me as anything I've ever known, and it is why I don't walk in step with what's going on in this world. I can see other things that most people don't see. And the other thing I know is that I'm not alone. There are others that came here from other worlds, and they feel the same way I do, and they don't know. They don't know why. So for 18 plus years, I've been trying to tell people why they feel that way, and don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we meet at conferences, we get together and we talk.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So that just makes me, I love your story, and in the fact that you have this engineering background, it makes us feel, makes us, well, it's something we can compare a little bit to. We're definitely not as brilliant as you, but we're both engineers, so we come from that line of thinking and the way our brains work, and we want to know the nuts and bolts of things. But the fact that over the years and after that experience you had, you've really been able to remember these things of who you are and where you've come from.
I've made a point of it, because I realized that no one's holding it back from me but me.
Right.
And I realize that, you know, as how difficult it is to bond a spirit with a body. That is a very tenuous link. I got killed on my motorcycle in 2012, and the cop that was bouncing on me to bring me back, when I opened my eyes, he said, "Welcome back. Like, you know, I just brought you back to life." And I said, that was so easy. That was the easiest thing in the world, dying. It was painless, absolutely painless. I totally lost my fear of death at that moment. But I wrote 6 bestsellers after that, and they just flowed out. Like, I realized I was on borrowed time, because I should have died right there on that highway. If that cop hadn't been like right there when I got hit on that motorcycle, I wouldn't be here. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to make the best of the time. And it's been 11 years, and I have done amazing things. Been around the world several times in that 11 years.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm waiting to write my bestsellers. I got hit by a train in 2008. My whole car got shredded apart, and I blacked out. I don't remember anything. And like, if I had been like a second sooner or later, it would. I mean, I wouldn't be here, you know. And it was crazy. But yeah, you lose that fear of death. You
do.
really, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, maybe my bestsellers are still to come, though. We'll see.
Well, you know, words aren't for everybody. My gift, I think everyone has a superpower, right? But my gift is I can remote view machines.
Wow.
So like the Fortune 100 calls me in after they've spent millions of dollars trying to make something work.
Oh,
And the engineers that started on it, they quit and left a long time ago. There are no schematics, no drawings, no theory of operation, just a box of parts or a bench of stuff or a assembly line that doesn't work. And somehow I can walk up to that machine and I know where the stuff's supposed to go, and I can make it work.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know, Brooks. Well, you know what's sad about this, and because of the way our world is, that you're not as well known as you should be at this point in time. That just is mind-boggling to me. That's how much you've done, and probably behind the scenes with these corporations to make them probably millions of dollars. But what do you get out of that? They're not gonna fess up because you do speak the truth, and that's just it.
I don't know. One of my patents, I revolutionized an industry. It sold for $299 million. I got $1, but my name is on it. So, I mean, in the industry, I'm well known, but you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It isn't about that. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't have much ego involved in it at all. But, if I get 500 people listening to me live on Rumble, I'm tickled to death.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. It's so very humble of you. And we are so grateful to even get a chance to speak with you and listening to your show. It's amazing that you can go that long and it's like you've done weeks of research just to come up with it and do the shows you do. And I've seen that.
I'm on 8 hours a week. So I do 2 hours on Wednesday, 3 hours on Sunday, and 2 hours on Friday. So I don't know. I could talk a lot longer. There's a lot more in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's incredible.
It is
Yeah.
amazing.
So, with all these, cutting edge technologies and things that you work on, are there any current projects you have in the works that you can talk about, or any?
Yeah, I mean, I invented the electric pickup truck. A lot of people don't know that, and I have 2 prototype electric trucks. They weigh half of what the Ford weighs, and the Ford will be an electric truck. I can just tell you. I know the physics of electric vehicles probably better than anyone alive. And my 2 prototypes are sitting there. One has batteries in it, and the other one doesn't, because the batteries are not ready. They don't have the technology yet. They're still doing chemistry that's 20 years old, 30 years old. There's new technology out there, but it's not in manufacturing yet. So I'm actually seeking out these labs and these companies, small companies with 5 or 6 people that are making this technology, because I want to put it into manufacturing, and I have a space for it in my truck. So I'm kind of at the end of the road of that. I made it a 10-year business plan. It's been 12.
Okay.
So I'm ready to sell the company, and I'm about a few days away from doing that if these buyers are real.
That's wow.
Great.
Okay. Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
You were just recently in California, right? Was that some kind of conference or another?
Yeah, I was invited to speak at the Biomed Expo. One of the technologies that I sought out, I think it was 17 years ago, was the life stream generator. I didn't exactly seek it out. I visited 22 labs after I met with Stephen Greer. I got all excited about new energy devices. So I formed a company called Phoenix Science Foundation, put some money into it, and I said, let's just go look for this technology. Who's building it? Who invented it? Let's put it in manufacturing. Let's get it out there into houses,
Yeah.
And I discovered that 20, all of them except one were fake. They were all just either not finished and way overrepresented, or they were just flat out fake. And they were just designed to raise money, which they did. A lot of these people made a lot of money off this stuff. And some of them went to jail for it too. But one did work, and that was a live stream generator. At the time, he could only make 1 a day. So I went into his little shop in Santa Monica and got him to where he could make 18 a day, which was a big boost for him. And now we can make 100 a day. If the demand was there, well, the demand's there, but the sales aren't there. We're kind of in a weird place in our economy where people just don't have what it takes to make good decisions in their lives. They're living payday.
Right.
But that's what I was demonstrating, was a live stream generator at the Biomed Expo. And I got to tell you, we hardly went to bed. After the expo was over during the day, we would plug it in the lobby of the hotel. And we didn't go to bed till 2:30 in the morning, because people just wanted to experience it.
Yeah.
And to explain exactly what happens when you plug it in.
Oh yeah, the human body, physical body, is made up of batteries. Each little cell is like a little electric battery. And when you're born, up until the time you make your first or second full cell change out, like 7 years old or 14 years old, your cells are fully charged. When they divide and replace a damaged or aged cell, it replaces almost like new. It's flexible, it's durable, it's everything works.
Mhm.
But as you age, the charge of the cells begins to drop. And it's not from the food we eat, it's just in our DNA. That's the way our bodies are made. But what we learned is that if the human body can connect with Earth directly, like bare feet to Earth, it gets flooded with electrons. It gets flooded with this magnetic charge. And the blood, which is a very unique cell, it's unique among all the cells in the body, which, in fact, in the universe that I know of, it can take up CO2 or oxygen, which are two completely different charged atoms or complexes, and it can flow through the body without sticking to itself, even though it's charged. But if the charge begins to drop, it begins to stick together. They get sticky, they get slow, they don't make oxygen exchange very quickly until we reconnect with Earth. We have this symbiotic relationship with Earth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Except for about 200 years, we don't make that connection very often. We wear shoes, we walk on wood, we carpet.
Concrete.
We don't connect back with Earth like we used to.
Yeah.
So genetically, congenitally, we have reduced our ability to recharge our cells. So the life stream generator puts that charge back in the cells. We've learned through Tesla technology that we found in warehouses left over from World War II that there are devices out there that create just the positive side of the wave, not the full sine wave. It's half wave.
Yeah.
And we program this to rotate this field at the Schumann resonance. So it's kind of like Earth in a box.
Yeah.
And if you get close to this or touch it for 15 minutes a day, the oxygen level of your blood goes up remarkably, like within minutes, and it stays there for almost 24 hours. But other effects happen. Like one of the things that we notice about, we have now live streams in 82 countries, and we often meet with these people either face to face or through video. One of the things we've noticed over the years is nobody wears glasses. It doesn't matter how old they are, they just don't wear glasses. And it's because the cells in your eyes respond to this charge so well that they begin rejuvenating, and people lay their glasses down. They don't wear contacts or glasses ever again.
Wow.
And we can't make any of these claims because the FDA will have a shot on sight. I mean, they've sent these pretty nasty letters.
Yeah.
So we just have to call it an energy experience. And over the years, just word of mouth, it gets out.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it was World War II devices that we were using, and we bought all the warehouses that were in the United States, all of them, and we went through every single core. So around 2018, I saw that we were going to run out and we were going to be out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So I redesigned it with modern metals, modern insulation, modern bearings, modern windings. I took the electromagnets out and put permanent magnets in to smooth the field out. And last year we started ordering them from a supplier. And we got those first ones in January. And we have been selling as fast as we could get them in. So this is brand new, upgraded Tesla technology that connects people directly with that earth voltage.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was heard the importance of grounding, but to understand how it actually works and that you can actually do it without having to. Yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh. It's not really convenient to go outside, and it's snowing out and try
to. And grounding is kind of a different term. Grounding means energy is going to ground. This is something else. We're actually connecting to the battery Earth. So we're actually receiving charge from the Earth, not discharging to the Earth.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
that's
awesome.
And it's called live stream generator. Is that right?
Yeah, live stream generator. It's made by a small company called 0 Point Research out of Santa Monica, California, and the link is on my website. Okay. And you can order it directly from there, and it's made. Every time you order one, they ship it directly to you, and we've never had anybody send it back.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to definitely share that. People are going to want to get that for sure after listening to that. I definitely want one. That's awesome.
That's
Very
great. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What else was there? There's a few things, a lot of topics. There's so much we can talk to you about. The next thing, I mean, I think Dan remembers when we went in 2019. What stood out is your talk mainly on the Hollow Earth and that kind of.
Oh yeah.
We were
That's
really,
the first time I
yeah.
heard of you was at that conference, Contact in the Desert. Yeah, yeah.
And I don't
We
think anybody spoke about it more
No,
than
at
you. I didn't know
Contact in the
anything.
Desert, I did the Remembering the Future, and they didn't know me. I was a substitute. One of the speakers had canceled,
Okay.
and I went in as a substitute, and just put my name up on the little sign there. They put me on the schedule at the last minute, but we packed the room out. They opened the doors, and people were out
Yeah.
in the hallway, and I only brought so many books. Those books sold out in like 9 minutes. They were gone.
yeah,
So it is. There are things about physics and the body that are not common knowledge, and once we put those tools in people's hands, they just gravitate to it. They take off. Of course, it may just be people that come to conferences. I don't know, but I think everybody is that way. Everybody's realizing right now that there's some other component to mortal life that we don't understand. It
yeah.
isn't just a struggle and then you die. It's not, let's see how many toys I can fill my garage with. It's not, what does my 401k look now? There's much more to it. That mortal life is actually a great treasure. It is,
Yeah.
it is something angels covet. They will give up their angelness to be mortal again. Mortal life is a great treasure, and we shouldn't waste it.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, I don't think even though there's a lot of people struggling and going through a lot of issues, I mean, I think we all have our karmic, our own path, and that we got here for a reason. I think we're all here for a reason, and to go through that journey and to remember why we're here. And for sure, I think.
Oh, that's so important. Yeah, to remember
Yeah.
why we're here. And a lot of people go into despair because there are entities in the universe that don't want us to make this journey.
Right.
We're not like every consciousness in the universe. I'll just put it that way. We're on a
Right.
special path. We are made in a special image for a reason, because we already accomplished so much that we were qualified to come in this form at this time.
That's a great point. Yeah. I think we're starting to figure that out now, and for sure, yeah, we're pretty special if we're here, born or alive at this time, incarnate at this time. I think you're right, for sure. So I was going to say about the Hollow Earth, because I think that's the first time we ever heard you speak about it, or heard anybody speak about it for that matter. And you were very, obviously, very eloquent about how you went through the whole process. But that reminds me too that in the news recently, there was something about a whole nother layer of water they're discovering, or now scientifically they're acknowledging this. So I don't know if you can talk about that too, how it ties in.
Well, yeah, I'll briefly tell the story. My co-author heard me speak one time, and she came up to me and said, I have an idea for a book. I said, that's nice. But she said, no. I want you to co-write it with me. Well, I'd written lots and lots of articles, but I'd never written a book before. So she showed me a picture. She said, what does this look like to you? I said, looks like a particle accelerator. She said, I thought so too. It's from a Babylonian scroll, 5,000 years old. I said, okay, you have my attention. So we wrote this book called The Ark of Millions of Years, which is what Noah called his ark when he built it. Well, the book turned out to be almost 1,000 pages, and our publisher said, no, you cannot publish 1,000-page book, your first book. Reduce it in size. So we cut it down. I think it was 560 pages with the bibliography, and we published it. And I told her, okay, we did it. We're authors. You buy 5 copies, I'll buy 5 copies, and that's it. We did it. We accomplished it. We finished it. No, it went to number 38 on Barnes and Noble, and we did not know there were a lot of people out there who had the same questions and the same feeling as we did. And what I learned when we were putting the book together, we were doing research on 44 ancient cultures. This recurring theme of life force coming out of the earth, of ancient races coming out of the earth, of technology that the ancients spoke about that came out of the earth. Even the Egyptians wrote about it, which didn't really write about much. And I was, of course, as a hard scientist, I'm going, yeah, whatever, you know. So they worship the earth. Who doesn't? Who doesn't worship the sun? But then some strange evidence started coming into place. We were going deeper into space with cameras, and we were turning around and photographing Earth from space. And one of those pictures came back with auroras over both poles.
Oh.
That was not supposed to be. We thought that the auroras were caused by the solar wind, which just strikes, you know, one side of the planet or the other, depending on whether it's summer or winter, not both poles at the same time. So they put together, and this blew my mind because my friends down at JPL whipped this program together called the Themis probe, which is 5 satellites and 1 nose cone, and they launched it out into space, fast track, specifically to find the origin of the auroras over the North and South Pole.
Okay.
They would not have done that if they knew the answer.
Yeah.
And the answer that they discovered, I think they faked. Because when they turned the program on as the satellites lined up, because they were in different altitudes of orbit, so they're going around the world at different speeds. When they lined up, they turned the system on, and what they call a cosmic bullet exploded from another dimension into our dimension between satellites 3 and 4. And the blast, of course, went 360 degrees, and it passed satellites 4 and 5 and went out into space. 3, 2, and 1, and as soon as it hit Earth, there was the aurora. So they said, well, that's it. The aurora is caused by cosmic bullets. They turned the program off and never said another word about it. And I went,
wow,
that does not make a science project. Something's wrong here. So that was my flag that went up. And then shortly after that, Dr. Y. Sessions at Washington University gathers up 600,000 seismograms. These are printouts that are made after big earthquakes.
Yeah.
And not just the seismogram where the earthquake happened. All of the seismometers around the planet pick up those vibrations. So what he did is he employed his grad students, probably for cold pizza, but he employed his grad students to crunch all those seismograms into a like CAT scan of the earth.
Yeah.
And that's where he published his paper saying there's another ocean underneath the Arctic Ocean. It's the size, underneath the Atlantic Ocean, and it's the size of the Arctic Ocean, and we can see the waves crashing on the shore.
Wow.
I said, you're talking about an ocean inside the planet? Yeah. So that was and so I said, well, then it's got to go to oceanography then. If we have 2 oceans and they're exposed to different radiation, because obviously our ocean's exposed to the sun and the atmosphere and all the pollution, and the inner one's not. So that means they're different water, probably different life.
Right.
And sure enough, in 2008, the Arctic ice broke open for the first time in, I don't know, maybe 20,000 years. And it made the Northwest Passage navigable, which it isn't unless you have an icebreaker, but it opened. And that summer was the same summer that Scripps University was doing a survey of rays, you know, like stingrays and manta rays, because as it turns out, rays are like tree frogs in the ocean. They respond genetically with genetic mutations to pollution. So they go every 5 years and sample the rays to see how the earth is doing, right? And normally they see 25 or 50 different kind of mutations and maybe a genetic shift of some kind. Not that year. That year there were 1,500 new species. And some of these were dorsal squids. They were frilled sharks, which are blind, haven't been seen in a million years. And these were fully developed adults. They weren't like anomalies. They were extinct. and they showed up. And I said, so that means that there must be an opening between the inner ocean and the outer ocean. And when that opened up, this life swam up through that connector, hit the Gulf Stream, were pulled down to Malaysia, and that's where they were sampled. So these things began to fall together, and we were able to locate what is about a 10,000 square mile range, which is about 100 miles by 100 miles, not really that big on the map. We think that's where this crustal opening is, but it's at about 86 degrees north. And there's only one ship in the world that can make that journey. And so I said, well, let's charter that ship and let's go find that opening. So that's where the Hollow Earth, expedition came from.
Right.
Okay.
And
So
you're still in progress of doing that expedition.
Yeah. Well, it's a $3.5 million expedition, which makes it 3 times as expensive as the most expensive expedition ever done on Earth.
wow,
And it also puts it out of my personal range. So we
would have
have
been
to
nice to have that patent money right about now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, if I'd had that, we'd already have the expedition done. And
Yeah.
unfortunately for us and for enthusiasts, those icebreakers are built and operated by the Russians. And we can't even buy Russian dressing right now, let alone rent a nuclear powered icebreaker from them. So it's on hold, and we'll see where it goes.
Wow, that's crazy. What did when they discovered that there was what seemed to be an ocean inside or underneath, excuse me, how thick was the Earth's crust between the oceans, or did they
900 miles,
wow, okay.
not 150 miles, not 200 miles. 900 miles thick is the crust.
Okay. Wow. And so, I guess on the surface of that water, on the interior, is there like an
Liquid.
atmosphere or something?
Yeah, it's liquid. It's not frozen. It's not
It's all liquid.
steam,
Yeah.
which means we're somewhere between 0 degrees or 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 212 degrees or thereabouts Fahrenheit on the inside of the crust, which means there's life there.
Wow.
Okay.
Now, do you know of that book Lake Vostok? That was
Sure.
friend
It's
of Greer's.
an Antarctic lake,
Yeah.
freshwater lake, that's warmed in a volcanic cavern. And they drilled to it for years and years. And the issue with Antarctic is the ice is much thicker and it's much colder. And you can only operate for about 6 weeks. And that's it. You're back to winter. And they don't drill with a regular drill. They have to drill very slowly, and they use alcohol as the lubricant because otherwise it'll just refreeze.
Yeah, right.
And it is very slow going. So as they got close to it, they went year round to get to it. And as you know, it's a treaty between 99 countries, the Antarctic region, and a different country takes over leadership each year of that. So depending on which country's in charge is how those scientific projects go. And you can't even go in some of these regions unless you have clearance.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think that says a lot. The fact that you need permission to go down to that whole continent. It's almost, it's the huge landmass that we're not allowed to even really go explore on our own.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great science down there. The neutrino lab is down there. That's the only one on the planet, and it's unique in the sense that the south pole of the Earth gets bombarded by these neutrinos, which are very small and very fast. They could go through a light year of Earth without hitting anything. So they had to build a special lab with these lead catch basins to try to slow these neutrinos down enough to measure them. And there are other projects down there I don't even know about. That's one that I do know about. There's a couple of observatories down there because they have a unique view of space that we don't get. And it is difficult working conditions. People get down there and they panic because it's either too cold for them or the magnetic field is so weird and they just have to get out of there. But some people do work there.
Wow. Do you think Lake Vostok's connected to that inner ocean too, or to another ocean, or
Oh no, it's not connected. No, it's a surface ocean.
just isolated?
A surface lake. Yeah,
Right.
it's hundreds of miles from where we're talking about.
Right, right. There was just always stories of maybe there's still ancient creatures that are survived because of the temperature from the geothermal, and they're still living under there. And they, I don't, there's a book, fictional book written about that, but it was interesting. It was a good read.
What was the name of the book?
It was called Lake Vostok, but
Oh, all right.
I think it was a friend of Dr. Greer's, Stephen Greer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so they were trying to give some disclosure behind Antarctica and possible technology, like a frozen, one of the UFOs that are down there, possibly multiple, from ancient civilizations and other things.
The thing about UFOs, just to get back to that subject, everybody knows they exist.
Right.
I mean, just nobody is surprised by it. They're everywhere. Fast ones, slow ones, triangular ones, cigar-shaped ones. They're out there.
Yeah.
Three things become evident to me. Number one is they've been here for a long time, and we don't even know if they're from Earth or from someplace else. But I'm so glad they haven't brandished their weapons. Because if they're that advanced to be able to dance away from our fastest jets and impervious, anything we do,
Right.
they probably have very advanced weaponry, and I'm glad that. And the other thing is that they got to go somewhere. They don't stay up there and fly around all the time. They have to have a home. They got to have a city, a community somewhere. They're not here by themselves,
Right.
40 light years away from anything.
Right.
And the most likely place for me to think that they go is the floor of our oceans, because we know very little about that space.
Exactly.
Yeah, people have described seeing things come up out of the water from the ocean a lot of times, a lot of craft from there. Yeah, for sure. I think Dan Willis mentioned that. Yeah.
Dan Willis, Bill Cooper from back in the day. Yeah.
Yep, I'm good friends with Dan. Known him for all the years.
He was the first one on our show, and he remembered our grandfather and sitting down with him at the Disclosure Project. So it was very good to hear his personal experience and actually how scared our grandfather was and about even coming out and speaking about anything. So
and that's, I guess, the fourth thing is, if they are from another world or an ancient Earth, why would they only deal with governments? That makes no sense to me at all. There's no intelligent life in our governments.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's such a good point. And they're going to communicate in many different ways. I mean, the fact that you even remember your past as being not from this world, that's one way of this disclosure. It's us remembering who we are and why we're here. And I think that's why a lot of us were on this mission to be incarnate right now. It makes sense.
Yeah, they call us, I don't even know if I like this name. They call us star children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the universe is the mathematical sum of all the sentient beings in it.
Right.
So the universe exists because we're here.
Right.
I was having a discussion with a physicist friend of mine, and there was scotch involved. But we were talking about going outside and looking up at the stars, and I was looking at the star Arcturus one day, and I said, I am so amazed that I can go outside and look up at Arcturus. It's like 7 or 8 light years away, and yet the photons leave that star and miss everything between here and there and reach the rods and cones of my eyes so I can see Arcturus.
Yeah.
And he said, well, actually, there's no path for the photon from Arcturus to Earth. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, put yourself on the photon spaceship. We love these thought experiments. Put yourself on the photon spaceship. You are traveling at the speed of light. What does the universe look like? I said, well, at the speed of light, mass becomes infinity. He said, or another way of looking at it is, I said, distance becomes zero. Everything is local. He said, that's right. At the speed of light, the entire universe is local.
Mm. Yeah.
So I said, that means our consciousness is responsible for slowing the universe down so we
Right.
can look at it.
Right. Just so we can see it. That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
When it gets into that theoretical stuff, which I love, and black holes, but there's that book, even our grandfather mentioned it, called Beyond the Light Barrier. That was by is Elizabeth Clare, I think is the name. But that's just talking about that advanced physics that she was told. She was a contactee and was told by these advanced races that gave her that information. So I just that made me think of it, and also remember that my grandfather actually called me a star child as a kid, and I didn't know. We didn't.
How about
never
that?
hear the term before.
Wow.
Completely new to us. So
I was talking with Dr. Jim Bell. He's at Caltech. I graduated from San Marino High, which is not far from there. And we were having a discussion because his students had inherited the Opportunity and Spirit rovers that were on Mars after NASA was done with them. They were alive still, so the university was running them. And I asked him, what's the hardest thing about it? What's the hardest thing about working with the rovers on Mars? He said, well, we'll write a program and we'll send it to Mars for Spirit to go do. And it takes 8 minutes for the message to get to Mars, but it gets to Marsus. Marsus is an orbiting dish that goes around Mars. It picks up the message, or picks up the program, and then it has to get around Mars to where Spirit is and download the program to the rover. So the rover receives the program, unpacks it, and then does its thing. It drives forward 30 feet, drills down, takes a rock, takes a sample, analyzes it, collects the data, and waits for Marsus to come back around. It beams it back up to Marsus. Marsus gets around Earth's side, shoots the beam back to Earth. He said, long story short, this is making my grad students old before their time. They get maybe 2 or 3 programs per semester.
right.
Oh,
So I said, well, why don't you just build a beryllium ion modem? He said, I don't know what that is. This is Caltech now. I said, well, Jim, that's because they haven't been invented yet, not till 2034. But here's how they work. So I explained to him how a beryllium ion modem works, and I think it blew his mind.
Probably.
So, beryllium is a large ion. We're used to working with these in the lab. And let's just say, I'm just going to hold this up and say, let's say this is a beryllium ion modem, or a beryllium ion. We can split this ion in two and separate these two halves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a principle called the Pauli exclusion principle. And it says that all the particles that are spinning around this ion spin at plus 1/2 and minus 1/2, and they have to balance out to be 0.
okay.
If we flip the spin of one particle, another particle will immediately flip to balance that equation.
Yeah.
If we split this ion apart and flip the spin on half of this ion, one of the particles on the other half will flip its spin instantaneously. It's called spooky action at a distance. We've known about it since the 30s. If you graduate in chemistry and get a physical chemistry degree, you might do that experiment. It's that commonly well known.
Wow.
What has been tried is the distance to split these two halves. Dr. Alistair did it 11 kilometers, which might as well be across the freaking universe. But we've also taken them in submarines, and it still works. So it's a subspace entanglement, we call it, that occurs between the two halves of the ion. Now, you could just as well take half of it to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And plus 1/2 and minus 1/2 is the same as 1 or 0, digitally speaking.
Yeah.
So if you just flip particles here, the particles flip just like that on Mars. You now have a subspace communicator.
Wow.
Well, it gets invented in 2034. And the instant we turn it on, we're going to start receiving messages from other entanglements around the galaxy. And it's going to change everything.
Wow. Can I ask you a question that just makes me think of quantum computing, and is it that same thing?
Yeah, well, quantum computing isn't really there yet. It is super expensive to do, and there's really not that much return on investment. It's so cheap to build computers now. There's really no reason for a quantum computer.
Hmm.
The real next generation of computing isn't binary, it's tertiary.
Um,
So instead of one change of state, you have four.
Wow.
And so the base code compresses. It's sort of like, you remember when fiber optic was the big thing?
yeah.
It started in, like, I don't know, 65 or 66. We started with fiber optics,
Right.
and they got better and better, and the manufacturing processes get better. And they thought, well, we'll just keep making cable. We'll keep making a fortune. Corning was just rocking and rolling with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then somebody figured out how to compress the light wave, and they got twice as much, 10 times as much data on the same cable.
Mhm.
Corning almost went out of business. No one was buying cable. Everybody was employing this new software.
Mhm.
That's what it's going to be like.
Okay.
Binary code will be obsolete, and it will be so, like, we're talking on about a 1 gig modem right now through our fiber optics on our street.
Right.
It won't even compare to what we're going to do in 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
Very cool. So I was gonna say, so can we talk about maybe the splitting of timelines? I think that was the other main topic we really want to touch on
Oh, yeah.
while we have a chance, because maybe this ties into that. I mean, when you think about technology and everything, but
Yeah.
what is your take on the splitting timelines?
As I have said, our observation affects things. When we look at things, they change, both the past and the future. So in 2007, I'm a new, reintroduced to meditation. So I'm like I'm crazy with it. So I'm in Idaho on sabbatical, and I decide to go into meditation and go to the year 2015. I want to see what it's going to be like in 2015. And I'm going to write about it. So I wake up in 2015 and everything is messed up. The weather is screwed up. The presidency is on the verge of collapse. We're on the verge of financial meltdown. And I'm going, what the hell happened here? It's
Right.
like everything was wrong. And I panicked. I slammed back into 2007, and I said, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. It's snowing on top of the snow in the passes. That's called a glacier. We're on the edge of an ice age. Something really weird is happening. So I said, what can I do? I mean, I'm back in 2007. What can I do to help avert this, to change it? And the thought came to me, you just need to just nudge 2007. And by the time we get to 2015, we'll miss that. We'll miss the calamity. So I wrote Remembering the Future, the Physics of the Soul and Time Travel. And I taught people how to use not just their imagination, but to resonate their imagination, how to build it into an energy source,
Right.
much bigger, like exponentially bigger than you can imagine, like 1 million people doing the same thought at the same time, only it's just you.
Mhm.
And so 20 million people heard that story. Literally 20 million people heard that story. And within 3 years, we started to see fractures in timelines. We started to see movies and books and videos and all kinds of things that we remember for sure.
Yes.
They're different.
The Mandela effect. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we called it the Mandela effect because the guy died in prison, and
Right.
then he didn't die in prison. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So no, there were a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And
for
what
sure.
we found is that people were doing it. People were learning to resonate, and they were going back and looking at the past. And when they did, it would push the timeline off, and we were getting these fractures everywhere. It's good and it's bad. It's bad in the sense that it made the future unpredictable. It's good in the sense that the forces that are trying to put this whole world into a collar and pull it to the ground and make it its slave also can't control it.
Right.
They don't see what's coming either. They're just trying things.
Right.
And we are actually the power. If we can learn these techniques and realize how powerful of beings we are, we could fix all of this.
Such a good point. Yeah. And then the faster we can do it, the better off we're going to be. And we'll see the improvements a lot sooner, and hopefully sooner than later.
Well, pick a timeline, because in the future, they're already changing it.
Mhm.
George Norrie asked me a question years ago. Is time travel possible? He said, when will time travel be possible?
Right.
I said, well, George, if it's possible 10,000 years from now, it's possible right now, because
Exactly.
they're coming here.
Great.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole
So
time
is there
aspect a lot. Yeah. Go ahead.
a means to learn the meditation process that you're talking about, or?
Oh yeah, I put it in the book. I use the flower of life meditation because it
Oh
helps
yeah.
you, even the novice, learn how to breathe right.
Yeah.
And breathing is part of getting the body's energy in the right place, and
Right.
sort of making the spirit the commander over the body instead of the body the commander over the spirit. And then I teach people a maintenance breath. So if you can get there in 6 or 7 minutes, but you want to stay there for 20 or 30 minutes and build something, solve a problem, then you're going to
Right.
need a maintenance breath that keeps you in that stage we call hypnagogia. It's a state between sleep and wakefulness. It's a point where our subconscious begins to rub against our conscious mind. And you can
Right.
feel it when it happens. You don't want to be driving a car when you're doing this, but you can feel it when it happens. And if you can stay in that space, this like Casimir effect happens. You get access to much faster portions of time.
Cool. Wow.
Very cool. Is the Dravalo, or the flower of life method? Is that the method where you imagine the Merkaba around you, the spinning
Yes.
Merkaba?
Yes. And we've measured this. We have actually photographed this. And I didn't even know what we were taking pictures of. When Drunvalo put that drawing up there, I said, I know what that is. I've seen that before. That is the energy field around us. It's the star tetrahedron. The tetrahedron, which is a pyramid, but it's 3-sided, not 4-sided.
Right.
It is the first 3-dimensional shape from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions.
Right.
So everything else is flat, and then you add the 1 dimension more, and you're a tetrahedron.
Yeah.
So if you take this down to the Planck length, and this is kind of remarkable, actually, you take this down to the Planck length, which is 10 to the minus 33rd centimeters, it's the smallest shape in the 3rd dimension that we can measure, and that's the resolution we have.
Mhm.
If you stack these together and form a sphere, and this has been done, and let me just hold this up as an example. You stack them together as a sphere like this.
Mhm.
But each individual star tetrahedron has a center point. And then you draw vortices between the center points. You get an 8th-dimensional shape called a Gosset polytope. We've done it with computers, and it was Anthony Garrett Lisi that first did it in Hawaii. We can't deal too much with 8th dimension. It's not accessible to us. So we have to get it in the 4th dimension to work with it mathematically. So we take the square root of this. That's how you jump dimensions. So to go from 8th to 4th, you take the square root.
Right.
You take the square root of the shape, you should get 2 equal spheres, but you don't. They're different in size. The vortices are, even though you're taking the square root of them, the vortice applies to the next shape. So you get 2 shapes different in size, one large, one small. That's confusing enough. But what's remarkable about it is the ratio. It's 1.618 to 1.
Right.
That is the origin of the golden mean. It's the secret to how energy goes from chaos into matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
So we are energy. We are energy power plants. And we are inputting energy into this universe, whether you do it consciously or not. You're doing it. So you might as well do it on purpose. And if you do it with focus, with skill, you can manifest physical things.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That resonates very much with. We actually had the pleasure of having Elena Denon and Dan Willis together, who talk about crystal technology, but they really just are really emphasizing the importance of breath and intention, and like you said, that meditative state to manifest what you want. Yeah.
Well, the key, that's good for making the pulse.
Mhm.
The key then is to make it resonate. And how you do that is that Fibonacci cycle,
Uh-huh.
because two energies added together will give you a third, correct?
Right.
That's your Fibonacci process right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you have to take the second and add to the third to get the next line.
Right.
If you do that for 8 iterations, you're on the golden mean. It's
Yeah.
1.618 to 1.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. I discovered that when I was teaching it at my math class. I had college class and I had adults in my class. And I thought, I'm going to teach this section on Fibonacci, and they're going to answer the 2 questions on the test, and they're never going to think about it for the rest of their lives.
Right.
I said, well, let's do an exercise. Let's do something amazing in class. So I took out my calculator and I said, so what if we don't start at 0? Everybody starts at 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. What if we don't start at 0? What if we start with just a random number and get another random number and add them together and you get a third number? Well, there's the first line. So I just carried on the process for 8 iterations and I got 1.618 to 1. I said, I should go buy a lottery ticket. That's pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Then I realized, what if it doesn't work with decimals? What about fractions? What about functions? What about linear equations?
Mhm.
It worked with everything.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, so if it works with any quanta, any mathematical quanta, it will work with energy. And we are energy. So I said, okay, if this is true, then I should be able to go interview people that are successful in certain fields and ask them and see if it plays out.
Yeah.
So I picked a real estate salesman, a professional baseball player, and a professional golfer. Why not? So I asked them. I went to the real estate person. I said, how many houses did you sell before you said, I can do this? I could quit my day job and I can sell houses to anybody.
Right.
It was 8.
8.
I asked the baseball player, how many times did you attempt to get out of the minors to get into the majors? It was 8. I asked the golfer, how many pro-ams did you play before you said, that's it, I'm going pro? It was 8. There was a resonance to it. And it built and it built and it built until the point where they were in the zone. They just knew, it just felt right what they were doing. And it was universal. It didn't matter what field it was, but I interviewed a lot of quitters, people that quit at 4 and 5, most of them at 4 or 5, because they said, it just wasn't for me. Just couldn't do it. Wasn't meant for me. And they would give up. They just never got to that point where the universe used these mathematical principles to help them.
Yeah.
It's a great lesson.
Wow. Yeah. You can apply that to so many things in your life, for sure. Yeah.
Because it ain't the strong and it darn sure ain't the handsome that become successful. It's the determined.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Absolutely.
a great message. Wow. I always thought about, I don't know, while you're talking about all that and the fact that the fourth dimension is time. And I mean, we live in a 3-dimensional world. So I guess that maybe that is, do you think that time has we basically created time for us to understand the physical. So is that kind of that layer that we have to overcome that layer of time or dimension in order to get to the other dimensions and see that for what it is.
Yes, it's true, but time is not linear; it's spiral, and this is a principle we need to learn. If we think of time as linear, we start thinking like an insurance actuarial, and we're building a 401k, and we're going to retire at 66, and you're going to be too old and decrepit to enjoy it by then anyway. Reincarnation is a spiral process. Let me go back to the beginning. If we go back to source, And we say, okay, we all came from source, but how? How did that happen? Same square root principle. Let's say source created a trillion souls, and it was done through the square root process. Well, if you do square roots, you realize you don't have to go through very, very many iterations, but you get pretty close to one pretty quickly.
Okay.
But you never quite reach it. It's asymptotic.
Right.
So every time you take a square root, you get two identical, right, numbers. Like the square root of 256 is 16, and then square root of 16 is 4, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 2 is 1 point, something, and then the square root of that, the square root of that. So when you get down to this lower part of the slope, a lot of the soul addresses are almost identical, and they're very basic, very young, very low amplitude. As they incarnate over and over and over again, they begin to spiral back. As they make the circle through life, they get more and more experience, more and more stature. They begin to grow. I go back to the scriptures on this one where it says, "Be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." That's our English translation. The real translations should translate, "Be therefore complete, even as your Father which is in heaven is complete." Doesn't mean flawless. It means have all the pieces put back.
Right.
And we realize when we read something or experience something over and over again in life, each time it's different. Like if you read a scripture through the Bible and next year you come back around to the same scripture, I can guarantee you that scripture means something different to you this year than it did last year.
Yeah.
Because you've already come up a layer and your understanding is deeper and wider. You have experience to go with it. Mortal lives are that way. So time is not linear, it's spiral. And it spirals up toward completion.
I'm glad you made that point, because it helps really. I think if people start to grasp that a little bit more, that sort of helps to explain why things may seem so chaotic, but also they're so synchronistic. They happen when they need to happen, and if we only recognize that, that's really what I consider that source talking to us or through us and getting us where we need to be. But we have to be willing to listen. For sure.
Unfortunately, those times that we wait for something because it needs to happen, they're rare. So we have to make them happen. Once you get into the mode of resonance, everyone around you begins to feel it and it begins to move as a group.
Great.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we travel through mortalities as groups, as pods of souls that have an affinity for one another.
That's such a good point. So, and that makes a good point just to say, if people feel alone, I think that's why people that are alone or can't speak out, they're speak the truth that they feel and open. They really resonate with you. They resonate with what we have to say. And I think that's important for them to know that we are a group. We are connected, whether we realize it or not. And our intentions are powerful together. Yeah.
Well, very important beings came to this world to live a mortal life to tell us that very thing.
Yeah.
Even, if you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus did not come here to show us his divinity. Everybody in the universe knew that already.
Yeah.
He came here to show us our divinity.
Yes.
It's a big difference in perception.
Right.
Exactly. Brooks, I love how you can be so scientific and use that side of your brain, but at the same time you're so spiritual as well. And I think that's so important.
Together.
Yeah, and I think
arc welded the halves of my brain together.
That's such a great thing to know, for people to realize they are both. They are all one and the same. And
science and spirituality was never meant to be separate.
Right.
It got separated because of jealousy and envy in the church. The church is what split science off from it. It was always meant to be together.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And that was done on purpose. The church split it off for a reason. science is doing the same. Now they're becoming their own religion, of course, the way we see it play out.
Religiosity, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the writings of Newton or Einstein or Riemann, and they're full of spiritual thoughts and their relationship to God. And what does this mean? Why is God, doing this or explaining this, or why is this principle true? And they always relate it back to God.
Yes.
Yeah, I read a book of biographies of mathematicians. I know you think like that guy's a nerd, but it was fascinating because all of these great mathematicians were handed whole mathematics. They didn't derive it from anything. They were handed whole mathematics in visions.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's really tremendous.
Like Tesla. I mean, Tesla's a great example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of affinity with Tesla. Most people, once they get there, realize that he was on a different wavelength, and he experimented with everything that he saw. When I went to Tibet, I managed to get in the Patola, which is for a long time was the tallest building in the world, in Lhasa at 11,500 feet in Tibet.
Wow.
And I don't let this get out, but I bribed a Chinese guard, and he opened the doors and let me down in the basement of the Patola where nobody gets to go. And when I stepped out onto the floor, there was a giant swastika on the floor, but it was built in 646, so I don't think it was actually a swastika. It represented the Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
And sitting on the floor down there was this stupa. The stupa was made of gold and had all kinds of jewels and stuff on it. And it was pointed at the ceiling, and on the ceiling was painted a 4-dimensional Stargate. So I asked my guide, who managed to get in with me, and we got out alive, what is this thing? He said, well, this theoretically transported the soul of a Panchen Lama through that 4-dimensional Stargate back to Nirvana.
Wow.
I said, well, you know what it looks like to me? He said, what? I said, it looks like a Tesla coil.
Oh, yeah.
So I took a picture of it, and when I got back to the States, I overlaid it over Tesla's coil, and it matched.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, this stupa stacks up like this, and there are these wings coming down from it, and wrapped around the wings were ribbons, red and white ribbons.
Mm-hmm.
And that was electricity. That's what they saw in the 7th century. They saw this, and they built this thing, which is an inanimate object, but it was to transport the souls of Panchen Lamas. And Tesla saw the same thing, and he built it out of wire, and he knew what the electricity was, and he never went to Tibet.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah.
That helps explain it. Yeah. Jeez.
Very cool. Well, speaking of physicists and things like that, what what are your thoughts on Nassim Haramein, like the unified field theory type stuff, and potentially getting to like over unity devices and potentially coming up with some means for a free energy?
Well, I stand embarrassed because I know Nassim pretty well, and so therefore I cannot say anything.
Okay.
That's a good answer. I like that answer, actually, because I'm sure you're working on a few things in the background.
I just, when you stand in the same space, you have to be reserved, talking about other people. I don't do it, and I know people do it about me, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. All right. Well, Dan, I don't know if you had a hard cutoff or not. I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to talk about and uncover or mention.
Do you?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, keep going. I love questions.
Well, if we have time, then okay. Let's get controversial because this is what the show's for. We're shredding the veil. But what do you think? I guess about. I mean, politically, I think you have a strong stance one way or another of what's happening. So, I don't know. Maybe if you want to do it a quick little summary overview of your opinion of what's happening and where things are going to, how it's going to play out. Maybe this year it seems more volatile than any, but.
Well, I don't do politics, but I am an avid observer of government and of society. And so obviously there's a lot of tension going on in the world right now, and for various reasons. And, it's frustrating to a lot of people because, 2 years ago, we had world peace in the palm of our hands.
Mhm.
Everybody was getting along. We went 18 months without an American soldier dying in a war. That hasn't happened since, 1787? We had world peace in the palm of our hands.
Right.
Everybody was looking forward to the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
I was fully set up for it. I was fully booked all the way through 2020.
Yeah.
Ready to go. And then somebody picked up the phone and shut the world down.
Yeah.
I don't know who has that kind of power, but what scares me is that there is that kind of power in the world. And I guess what scares me even more is that there are people who will let it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that comes to like the whole dark hats, the light or the white hats, the black hats, and that kind of subject. So do you kind of have a stance on is some of this being allowed to happen by the white hats? A lot of people always question that and what the true intentions are. If this is all being played out as it needs to happen, or
Well, I know that there are people who always say, well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe now this will wake people up. I'm not a big believer in that. In fact, I'm not a believer in pretty much anything. I like facts. I like provable facts.
Right.
And, when people ask me, do I believe in God? I'm almost universally saying, no, I know God, but I don't believe in God. I believe in things, that are not seen, but I got to tell you, Jesus is my closest friend.
Right.
Just not one of those things that I have to imagine.
Mhm.
So I don't think that there are white hats in charge of anything. I think that there are large forces at war with one another in the universe, and they've been at war since this universe was created. I think there are at least two sides. One is dark and one is light, and I can feel the darkness and I can really feel the light.
Yeah.
What I want to see, of course, is the light to turn on and push the darkness back into the shadows where it belongs. I think we're very close to being able to do that. There are tactics that have been used for billions of years. I know they've been used on other worlds because I've seen it. And they're being used here. But they can be defeated. They can be overcome. And it doesn't have to be through violence. It can happen.
That's good. That's a great message. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree with that.
There's the conflict that's going on right now in Ukraine. That's just the pressure point. There's a lot more to it than that. But that conflict would end the moment, and I mean the moment, the money is cut off to NATO.
Right.
As soon as the money is cut off, that conflict ends.
Yep.
We head toward peace again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how hard that is to do. I look at Congress. Like I say, I do study government. Congress has 3 jobs. That's it, just 3. Each branch of government has a job. They have 3. Write laws, manage the money, and declare war. That's it. That's all they do. So why all the hearings? What is this about? You can't put anybody in jail. You don't have that authority. Why are you grandstanding in front of C-SPAN to get reelected? It just makes no sense to me at all. Use your power.
Yeah.
Cut off the money.
Yeah.
Cut off the money.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
And maybe it all just comes back to as far as where we put our focus, and that somehow the mainstream still does what it does, and people are still glued to that TV and watching what's next.
Well, I kind of bristle at that because we're the mainstream. This decentralized news service that we have out here, America Free Radio and Shred the Veil, we are the mainstream.
Yeah.
The fake stream is 6 rich white guys that control the networks.
Yeah.
That's the fake stream. We outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1, 1,000,000,000 to 1.
I love that. Yeah.
Yet they control the airwaves.
Yeah.
But they are not the mainstream. We are.
That's a good point. Yeah. I like
Yeah,
that.
puts it in perspective. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
No.
Well, Brooks, where can most people find you at your website? It's bruceagnew.com, right?
Yep. Brooksagnew.com.
Sorry.
Everything is linked to there. I've learned over the years not to have 50 websites.
Yeah.
Just have one, sell the brand, and put everything there. So you can buy my books, technology. You can read about my philosophy. You can link to my weekly radio program. It's on Wednesdays and Sunday nights. And we continue this. We just never stop. And we're going to keep going as long as we can. And then, fortunately, this year, live events have started again.
Right.
So we're going to be up in Illinois in May on the 22nd. And we're going to do this live. So you'll
be there with the Truth Journey to Truth guys?
Absolutely.
Perfect. I really want to go. Dan has to go because I can't make it. So it's up to him now to take our spot. So
we gotta shake hands, gotta do pictures.
That'd be great.
Gonna happen.
Yeah, do what I can for sure. Absolutely. That'd be awesome.
And what about the Mount Shasta? Are you going to be back there in the summertime?
I will be with Jonathan Shalimar has an event called the Chronicles of Gaia. So I'm going to be appearing at that, and that's going to be a marvelous event. It's going to be a new moon, and during the Persids, and if you've never been at Shasta on a clear night, that's a new moon. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. The Milky Way will blow your mind.
Right. Beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we can certainly meet you again, or at least I can meet you in person, and Dan too. We can do some more together. Again, thank you. It's such an honor to have you, and I feel like you're such a good bridge between worlds, and I like to look at what we do as kind of trying to bridge the gap between these two different worlds we're in. So just again, such an honor. And your books too. I got to read them all. I started to look at what they're about.
Which one did you start with?
But the ones you're basically the novel of it's the 3-part. I think it's three.
Oh, the Birth Trilogy. Ooh,
yes.
Make that into a TV series.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say it's so prophetic just reading the summary and what I've gotten to so far. I'm like, wow, you must have seen all this happen the way it's playing out right now. But that's amazing.
I took a sabbatical about 18 months. It took me to write those 3 books. That's crazy. 1,100 pages and it was nuts. But I have a friend that has a farm out in the country, and he has a screened-in porch. So the bugs don't eat you alive. So I set my laptop up out there in the woods and wrote those 3 books. It was insane how that flowed.
I bet you were channeling something for sure.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't channeling it. I was standing there witnessing it, writing it down as it was going on around me. It's I don't know. It's a journey. It is a journey. That's why we call it the birth journey.
Right.
Awesome. So are you going to make it into like a TV series?
Yeah, we are. We're talking with, I have an entertainment attorney, and we're talking with producers, and I've written, not all the scripts, but pretty much through the first season. We've had several script contests we've won. So it's a great concept. It's the time for this story to come out.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, the elevator pitch, Earth is a living thing, and it has a symbiotic relationship with the people living on it.
Okay.
Over the millennia, what has happened is when the population becomes more wicked, the Earth has a allergic reaction, and it rises up and spanks mankind down to a few tribes again. Until recently, we grew very fast. And now there are 8 billion of us on the planet, and roughly half of us are wicked and half of us are good. And Earth can't decide whether to destroy us or release its bounty to us.
Right.
So it's going to return to its original form and split back into the energetic earth and the physical earth,
Okay.
and the race of man divides with it.
Ooh,
So
okay.
that's, and then they go to war with each other. So this is the
Wow.
unsolvable problem. And the remarkable thing is everybody feels it happening around us right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll have
Sounds
to be
amazing.
ready to read that book. We'll definitely people go read that, and we look forward to seeing it in the show when it comes out. I think
Absolutely.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I've been already at the podium accepting the Grammy. So
You already see it. Yeah. Nice.
Now we love it. Thanks
Well,
again
thanks.
for
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Brooks. Really appreciate your time. And it's been an honor to have you. A great conversation. And hopefully
well,
we
it's
can do it.
been my pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Now, I want you to ask, what I've told you, is it going to make any difference in your life? You better wake up, better change, get interested, changing your life.